Awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have Tony Pollard. He is with Tony Pollard Speaks. He is a speaker that speaks out to people that are like law enforcement or that are in a job that they feel like there isn't much promotion, and he keeps them inspired, keeps them driving, gives them all the tools that they need. But as usual, I'm going to let Tony take it away and tell us literally what he does, who he is, and a bit of his backstory. So why don't you take it away, Tony?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Something about me when I work with groups, first of all, I had to find out who I was. And I didn't find out who I was and that I had burnout until I was fired from a job. And then when you get fired from a job and relieved from duty, there's really a demotion, but that demotion was so embarrassing because I'm in public education. Silly mistake I made. Superintendent comes to me and he says, I can't have you doing this if you want to be promoted. And I had just gotten promoted like the weekend before. And I really just sent an email out to the family that I had been with saying goodbye. But I got in a hurry, sent the silly email out. It was a mistake. And it had some sexual innuendos that weren't meant to be in that thing. And somebody took it wrong. Next thing I know, I'm getting demoted. But that was the best thing that could ever happen to me because I did two things. First of all, I cried because I had worked so hard to become a principal. And then I Googled, how do you repair your image when you make a mistake? All these things popped up. Everything popped up. And I just started doing those things, journaling, reading books, everything on how to improve and myself personally. And in doing so, all of a sudden, there's a whole nother world that I had forgotten about for the past 20 years in education as a teacher and as a coach. And that was saying, I've got to work on myself. I had been a single father for years. And when I started realizing that I had made those mistakes, I did one thing. I ran this obstacle course race that was like a 5K. I ran it with my daughter. And from there, I read the books. I did the journaling. There was another race. There was another race. Everything was about challenging myself. And you and I've kind of talked very briefly, but I am really an introvert at heart. I don't like speaking in front of people. So that was like the next challenge. I said, well, I got to go do something that really scares me. So my wife said, why don't you try Toastmasters? And that's where you kind of speak in these little groups. And I started doing Toastmasters. Next thing I know, I was having these businesses, hey, come and do our Veterans Day program because you're a veteran. And I would speak to like 20, 30 people. Then I started getting hired, here and there. It's not a lot. I said, man, I'm getting hired to speak. Then I was getting hired to go train people in other states and work with them and motivate them and inspire them, all because of my failure and my burnout. And I didn't listening to your podcast. I said, oh, I had that too. I just didn't realize it was in a different way. I was burned out because I was just setting myself up for a narrow vision of how my career should end. I'm a teacher. I'm a coach. I'm assistant principal, a principal. I will retire. Not anymore. The world's like freaking open up to me and I love it. So
that is awesome. I love hearing that because so many people think that their failures define them and they that they're never going to come back from it. So it's awesome to hear the story of that happening, just like mine, that happening, and then you bounce back from it. It actually creates a much better version of yourself. So Tony, I like to ask everybody, just so we have a benchmark kind of thing. What's your definition of burnout? What would you define burnout as?
So I'm middle age. I'm 50 years old. I turned 50 in October. And so my definition of burnout, and I'm going to equate it to raising my daughter. I was a single father and her mother wasn't in her life. And just raising that daughter and watching her grow, that's where I put all my energy into her. And I put all my energy into being a good teacher and a good school administrator. And I experienced burnout, first of all, by getting fired and realizing, hey, I'd only focused on one thing in life. And when she left to go join the military herself, I was lost. I mean, and that's hard as a father and a parent. You're going to experience it one day because you put all your energy into these things that make you happy and goal oriented. And that's what you live for. And when all of a sudden that's gone, you have to make a choice. You're going to either live or you're going to sit and give up. And that's when I realized I've got to do so much more to change my direction and my trajectory in life. And I just started living the things I had always said I wanted to do, but I wasn't doing them. That's my definition of a burnout. When you're thinking about them, but you're sitting on the couch watching Friends or Big Bang Theory and not living your life. Do I like those things? Sure. But that's not what I live for anymore. I live for doing something extra and extraordinary in life.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. You know, you're not doing what you love. Can totally relate to that. You know, as we talked before, and as everybody knows, ex law enforcement and that, and I had to go through that same thing. I thought law enforcement, even though when I went into it, I didn't think it was going to be what I would do forever. But then I got into it and it's like, I want to do this for a long time. And then, ended up leaving it. And I had to hand my resignation papers in, man. That was probably one of the hardest days that I've had, because I wrote them and it took me ages to actually go hand them in, because I was like, I'm not going to email these in. I got to go hand it to my senior. And it took a long talk, a lot of tears. And I can totally relate to that one, because I wasn't doing what I loved. So what have you learned from experiencing this, to help yourself, help prevent yourself or even overcome what you did? What's the top things that you learned that you do to this day to help prevent getting back there?
Chris, I'm going to kind of backtrack in my life real quick, and it'll kind of full circle. When I was little, I was diagnosed special needs, reading and math. Growing up, I had these glasses that were thick. I had this short haircut because my dad was in the military. I got picked on, probably got bullied. And in high school, I had this high school counselor. You take these little tests to say what you should do in life. Oh, I should be a ditch digger, basically, is what she told me. And I'll never forget thinking to myself, well, I want more for that in my life. And I had nobody in my family had ever gone to college.
Yeah.
I didn't have a way to go to college. I was good at football, American football. And I had a couple offers, but because of my grades and things like that, I wasn't going to get those scholarships. I joined the Army. In the Army, I was stationed in Germany at 17. Like, I had just finished boot camp stuff. Here I'm 17-year-old on my own, experiencing this world that's around me that I had never experienced before. And when you do those things, you experience things that you have never done before. It kind of opens your mind up to say, I can do so much more in life. 20 years later, after Desert Storm, coming out of the Army, going through a divorce, raising my daughter, and then all of a sudden I experienced that major burnout in life. What do I do? Oh, that's scary. For me, it was that failure, and I started challenging myself. Like I said, the first thing was doing an obstacle course race. I had always been, I'm a short, stocky guy. I'm always going to work out, but I started running. I'm not a runner. Everything I did was about being uncomfortable. So I started running. I have this love-hate relationship with it now. I've run 2 marathons. I want to do an ultra race. I want to do all this. So I did this Go Ruck. I don't know if you've heard of Go Rucks.
Yeah, I've done Go Ruck. I've done Go Ruck.
Well,
I did it here
overnight Go Ruck. My wife drops me off like at 9:30 at night, and I do the overnight. I'm like the oldest man there, and all these guys are in their 20s, maybe a couple of 30-year-olds, and I would think I was 47. He said, "Dang, you're old." And I said, "What's the oldest you had?" He said, "A guy was 65 doing the overnight." That's how we should live our life. Freaking, I'll get excited thinking about it. Yeah. We should want to be 65 and moving.
Yep.
Period. And whatever that movement is to make you happy and bring fill your soul for something, full of something. When you do that, man, you're exploding and you're blowing up in life and you're living fully.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And Go Ruck, I did it. I was training for to get into our version of SWAT team here. I was like, I need to challenge myself before I do it. And I found Go Ruck and they ran it here. And I did the day one. I did what was it? I think it was like 13 hours or something like that we ended up doing. And it literally the next day, my traps, everything, like we got to the bar at the end of the day. And I don't know which cadre you had, but we had cadre, it was Chris. So it was actually quite easy. um, with my name being Chris, but we got to the bar at the end of the day, and literally the lady gave us our beers, and we all reached out to grab them, and we all went thunk, and literally we just couldn't even hold we almost asked for straws, but we're like, no, we can't do that. So we're literally drinking them, holding them as close to us as we possibly could.
You have to man up. Be like, I got to do
it. we had to fireman carry because one of my buddies who I got to do it at the last minute, he literally he hurt he's got a bad knee. He's in the police as well. And we had to fireman carry him about 3 miles, the last 3 miles all the way. And we were just like, me and one other guy, fireman, carried him. It was like, oh my God. But it challenges you, and it takes you to that place of being uncomfortable and getting okay with being uncomfortable. So when you do feel like you're getting to those down levels, you can go, hey, wait a second, I've been worse than this. I've been in situations that are worse than this. And I think that's where military and police, if they focus on it, have that ingrained into them from boot camp, from, academy, and that, because you are literally pushed to your brink at times. And I know recently they're changing it and that, and I think it's terrible because you need to be pushed to those levels where you think you're going to die and really know that you're not. And because it creates more resilience and more in life. But real quick, I want to touch, because you said you went to Desert Storm and you did a lot of time. And how many years did you do in the military?
So I did 4 years active duty when I got out. And so I got out in 92.
Yeah.
And I said, let me go right in the National Guard. I had the college money they give you and everything. I went right in the National Guard from being basically with infantry and a forward observer, kind of on the scouts and stuff like that, to go in National Guard, which was not high speed like that. You're just just a different animal. So I was too high strung. I had to get out. Yeah. So I took a break for 2 years, then went back in, and I was in for several years. When I went through a divorce, I had to get out because I had custody of my daughter. Yeah. When she graduated high school, I said, well, there's all these things I'm doing. I said, let me see if they'll let me finish off my last 6 years. I went back in the military. I'm like this old man in National Guard now, got 2 years left. But I look around these young people and you're right. Like, they don't have that drive that they could have. And I love working with teams. I said, man, there's so much more for you. And my goal, I said, I want to retire above a millionaire if I can, so I'm working toward that end, I think. And they said, well, how are you going to do that? I said, man, you just do it. You got to start saving. You got to start planning for those things. Can't go out partying every weekend. And I know you got your 20s, you want to have fun, but kind of define what that fun is for you. And when we talk about doing all these races and stuff, they're getting their dopamine rush from drinking their beer on the weekend. My dopamine rush comes from a different way now. And I did the same thing they're doing. But now I wish I'd go back and say, hey, I'm gonna relive this, but never look back and say, oh, I failed at this. Look back and say, I can learn lessons from this and grow. So
yeah, no, that's a very good point. What do you believe, like, as far as with the military and that, because I know military is similar to the police and that, around the mental side of stuff, which in my belief can cause a lot of that burnout and that as well, because you have those traumatic things that you possibly never deal with. Do you feel the same way with your experience with the military?
When I first came back in Desert Storm, and you've had to experience things yourself, and any veteran, if they've been in combat, they've experienced things. So I can smell dead bodies sometimes, and it'll just hit me. I used to wake up in cold sweats. I would come back and look how spoiled Americans are. I think, man, you have everything. Have you ever seen a child without food? And we give him an MRE, and that might be the only food he gets for a week. If we think about the things that have defined us in life, how do we need to live beyond that? I'm thinking about that child that I looked at whose parents were probably killed in Desert Storm. And it was those things that made me realize I want to be a teacher and give back. So if we're not living to try to give back and serve others, just like what you're doing and what I'm doing speaking now, then I really think we're kind of hindering ourselves and our personal growth. And we're also hindering our professional growth, because there's so many opportunities when you just decide to serve and give back that can really shape who you're going to be and really shape you when you're dead and gone, because you've shaped and helped others. So
what do you recommend for those guys that are in those, obviously you work with a lot of people like teachers and police and military and that, what's the thing, like, obviously you're seeing, as police, and especially in the States at the moment, all the anti-police and all the, all of that kind of stuff going on. So you have things coming from all different ways. What would be your advice for people that are listening that around dealing with the trauma of the job, but also, being able to keep focused on that giving, because it's the whole reason that you join forces or police anyways.
When we came back from Desert Storm, I was stationed in Germany at the time. So we went back to Germany. When we arrived in Germany, we had rocks and stuff thrown at our bus, just like you hear about Americans coming back from Vietnam. So I had never experienced that hatred toward us. And when it came back to America, you get that hero's welcome. So when people experience things, and these police officers, like I told you before, my good friend is a police officer. When he felt burnout on the one side, dealing with drama every night and every weekend, and having to chase people through woods and having guns held at him, he transitioned. Yeah. And sometimes it's okay to pivot and transition. He's still an officer, but now he's an officer and he works with teenagers and he works with elementary kids as a resource officer in a school. And I can tell that brings him joy. And so you just got to find your joy, and you got to be willing to get help. You spoke about in your first podcast, when I came at Desert Storm and I was angry watching that, I said, what do I need to do? I went and got help, and I knew that I was angry. And people know me now, they would never think, oh, he was an angry man. Well, I had anger issues, and I have to admit that. And when you have anger issues, when you tell a guy who just asked for a quarter, go get a job, you're failing that person and you're failing yourself. And I had done that, and I'll never forget that. And I wish I could see that guy 30 years later and say, man, I'm sorry. Here's a quarter now.
Yeah, I can't remember if I said it in my first in the first episode where I introduced myself, but I obviously I did my motorcycle trip, and I did that for 8,000 miles around the US, and literally, again, to grow myself and force myself back to who I used to be, but also out of my comfort zone that I was in. And I remember I was driving around, and I pulled into a gas station, one of those little tiny hick towns in the middle of the Southwest that literally, the ones that I'm talking about, where there's a gas station and maybe a little restaurant or something. And I pulled into the gas station, and there was a homeless guy sitting like next to the front door, and he was there, and my police brain just went straight on, don't trust him. I had stuff strapped to the back of the bike, so literally all you had to do was, it was strapped with bungees, so you just had to undo the 2 bungees and it would take my whole bag. And I remember I filled up with gas, and I looked over and I was like, no, Chris, it'll be fine. We're in a gas station. There's people around, and I was literally the only vehicle there. So I walked inside, and I literally took 2 steps inside, and I went, Chris, what are you doing? Go talk to him. Because one, it's going to undo that stress that you have around whether he's a good guy or not. But 2, also, you're going to brighten up his day. And this is what you're about. You're about helping people, and you're about making a difference in life. So I literally talked to him. He literally had the same exact thing. He was ex-military. He had some stuff happen, and he just felt like he couldn't get a job. He couldn't find what his purpose was in that. And so literally I went, have you had anything to eat or drink? Had anything this morning? And he's like, oh, no. I was like, do you like coffee? And he's like, yeah. I was like, come on in, I'll get you a coffee. So literally bought him a coffee and told him to get whatever snacks he wanted. Now at the time, I was literally doing this trip on a budget. Like I had like $50 a day, and that part of that included gas. So, but I was like, get him. And so we ended up having a good chat about the stuff and that. And I was like, this is shifting and changing me out of that burnout, getting me through that PTSD of all the trauma of having just shit people, feeling like people are shit all the time. And it's so important to actually ask for help. As I said in my first episode, took a long time, a lot longer than I wish it had, but it does. It takes that time, but it is asking help and knowing that there are others out there like you, and that you can make a difference. And if you're focused on that, it's so important. So Tony, what do you say to people? Obviously there's, burnout, I think, is quite high rate, obviously in your higher end roles where you feel like CEOs in that, because they are a little bit in that lone position. But as a teacher, and as also obviously ex-military, you got friends that are cops. What is the key things that you teach or you tell to them to, keep them driven in that role where they feel like there's nowhere that they're going to be able to go?
So I chose this silly background on purpose because life gets chaotic. And so when I'm talking to groups, and I bought this hourglass, and what I need people to realize when I'm working with them is you only have so much time. And when they see this hourglass and they put it in perspective, and I try to share with them, that's just each grain of sand is like a second or a minute in your life. And when it's gone, it's up.
Mm.
And you don't want to look back when you're 85 years old, sitting in a home, your family doesn't come see you anymore. You've lost all your other relatives and say, I didn't live and I didn't do anything. You want to be able to share those stories. And I know, I don't know how many children you have, or if you have children, you get your dog and your wife. You want to be able to wake up one day and say, I lived every grain of sand in my hourglass. That's really what I preach to them. And I tell them to do it with courage, resilience, and discipline. Because if they do that, they're going to reach everything they want to do. My goal is to hike the Appalachian Trail. You biked across America. So I train to hike the Appalachian Trail. When I'm cutting grass, something I hate to do, I wear my pack. Because I know that's what I want to do. I don't want to lose. I don't want to wake up and say I left out all those grains of sand and I'm going to live them. I want to live each and every one of them. So that's what I do with them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And I think I'm feeling like this interview is awesome because we similar perspectives on things and that, because it is, at the end of the day, I tell clients of mine all the time, I'm like, what would happen if you didn't wake up tomorrow? Would you be happy with your life? Or, and if you're not, okay, cool. What do you need to do right now to change it? Right now.
I got a story. Can I share it?
Yeah, go for it.
So my wife, she won't let me say it. She's older than me. She's my cougar. And so, but she woke up and I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, you got to figure it out. I mean, whatever it is, just step out of she saw me doing the things I was doing to change me. She finally is doing what she wants to do. She became a trainer. She's a personal trainer. She's a trainer for F45. And you ought to see the smile on her face. And she's the oldest trainer. They all want to look like her and be like her because she decided to live what makes her happy. Yeah. And so here's these young people, and those women look. I said you're this old compared to them. Don't worry about that. But I look at them and I said, you have nothing to worry about. You look great. My wife's fine. And I'm very, and when she comes home and she has that smile on her face and I can see it because she got to work with these people and help them. That's what we're living for, and that joy in her face because she decided to go do something that was uncomfortable for her and actually just do it.
So what do you say, Tony, to those guys, those men and women that they're in a role or they're doing something that, they used to love and they really did love it, but now they feel like they don't, but they're afraid to actually make a change?
Yeah. And I was willing to make that change in myself. And so, but when I was a teacher, I taught for several years and I'm thinking, could I have done that for 30 years? Me personally, probably, because I just had this joy for it. But some people who teach for 30 years and you see it on their face, they're giving it to the students in a way they should not give it to the students. They've lost that passion. When I'm talking to some of those groups and when I'm talking to schools, I don't talk to a lot of schools, but I taught this class 2 years ago and it was like 4 people in the group. We're at this restaurant yesterday and this lady who's retired now, she was my teacher in high school. She said, Tony, I needed that on that day because I was done. And she had the smile on her face and I was at this restaurant. She said, can I have your card? I have 3 or 4 groups I want you to speak to. And I really just try to share with them that, you may experience burnout on this job. You've decided, I don't want to go in a different direction. I don't want to be a school administrator. I don't want to coach anymore. I'm just teaching. But what teachers need to realize is that, hey, you have students for 9 months. In European countries, it's 10 months. And then you get a whole new set and you need to look at it that way. Everything, you're going to get something new each year or each day. You define what that new is going to be. So how can you touch the students in a way they're going to affect them positively, but also affect you? Yeah. So that's on the teacher side. With police officers and military that I speak to, you've had this experience. What are you going to do to give it back? A lot of military people and people that they don't want to share that story, but that story is what needs to be shared with people who need it to grow. And if I can work with people and say, hey, please share their story. I've got this one young guy, he had a Purple Heart. That means he obviously had some major combat. And but I've talked him into sharing his story. And by him sharing his story, it's helped him. And now he's going out and helping other people. You teach people that you still have something to give and you still have something to give at a high level. You just need to get past everything that you think is negative, because it is. 5 things are negative, but what are the 10 things that were positive in that same day?
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. It's the one thing that I teach all of my people as well, and what I say on here quite often is always find the positive out of what you perceive as the negative, because
Mhm.
there's always something there. Even if you don't know
Oh,
what it is, look for something. Even if it's, shit, I woke up grumpy this morning, but hey, I'm alive.
exactly. I'm alive.
I'm alive because so many people didn't wake up this morning. So, it is. I love the message that you're teaching out there, Tony. It is such a positive one, especially for our front line, but really anybody, because you don't just do, obviously, who are some of the other people that you speak with?
Electric co-ops. Those are jobs that are sort of like that. I mean,
Mm,
there's not, you're going to have your CEO, your people, but there's really not a lot of promotion in those jobs.
mm,
So it kind of levels out. And so they're going to be a lineman. They're going to be a warehouseman. There's not much change there,
mm.
and there's not a lot of promotion. So I work with those kind of groups, and that has been fun as well, because what I find out with those groups, man, they live a hard life.
Yeah.
So imagine during a hurricane and the storms, you have to, and they got to go out, give somebody power as soon as that storm is over, but it's still raining and it's still miserable. And they go out there and they do it with joy in their face. And sometimes people are cussing them, I need the power now. But they have those others, and it's the others that smile at them and take them a cup of lemonade or some food. And they say, this is why I do it. I don't
Yeah.
just do it for that paycheck. I do it for these reasons here that bring me joy. You can give people all the raises they want, but if they're not motivated to perform at a high level, they're not going to do it. They're just going to enjoy that raise and sit back and do nothing. So if you have an opportunity, you're in that job that kind of is here, there's not much upward mobility. What are you going to do to help others? It always comes back to helping others. When you help others, you're helping yourself. And that's the rush. That's the dopamine rush that you need to fill yourself with. So
Yeah, that
be
contribution
selfish,
side of
but
stuff.
do it.
Yeah, that contribution side of stuff. That leads me into my next question. This is probably where I'm the most passionate, because I believe when you do know it, um, burnout becomes second. It's something you'll always figure out ways to get through burnout. And you touched on a little bit just there before, your why. And so my why, which I've said multiple times in episodes, but I like to say it again over and over again so people can find theirs. My why is I want to create less pain in myself and others' lives. And so I recognize that, and I've done work on it and found it. And we got a little process that I take people through, and just have them literally ask themselves why it's important over and over again until they literally get to the deep levels. But mine stems from childhood, seeing my parents fight. It wasn't anything nasty if I compare it to, like, they'd have some alcohol and they'd fight, they'd have an argument, shit would get thrown, stuff like that. And I'd always want to stop it. And I know it stems from there. And then it got concreted in through seeing people get bullied, and my brother get bullied, and me get bullied. And so I always want to create less pain in lives. What would you say your why is, Tony?
As you get older, your why changes.
Mm,
And we're just talking about your parents. My parents used to fight like cats and dogs too. And they would always, before they divorced, they would always put me in the middle of it. And that's when I was going to 7th or 8th grade. And I really thought about committing suicide.
mm,
And I would go out by myself. I was such an introvert. We moved around so much. So I was always super shy because we'd move in the middle of a school year or something. And, but I remember this coach coming up to me, and this coach said, "Hey, Tony, come and sit down and let me talk to you." And he would just talk to me about me. He didn't have to do that. I was his football player. And he did that, and he spoke to me about me. And I remember thinking years later in life when I was teaching, that was his why. I don't know what happened in his life the night before. Maybe he got in a fight with his wife. Maybe his kids didn't listen to something he said. But his why was helping people like me who he saw were down and out.
lift people
That's
up.
my why now. I want to help people. I don't just do this for me. I do it for me, for the challenge and things like that. But I do it because I'm saying, man, if I can put a smile on somebody's face or make them see something in a different perspective, that rocks. That brings me joy. But I know I've helped them move past whatever was. So, hear about people committing suicide. They can only see that narrow thing. They can't see
Yeah.
everything outside them. My goal is to help open that up. I want to get rid of that tube, because life is out there and it wants to embrace you. It
Bring more
wants you to
perspective.
take it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So it's bringing that more perspective to people's lives. which is, it's so important. And, my view is what I've realized from doing this with a lot of people and actually finding people's whys in that is it stems from their childhood. And actually, I find that it actually stays with them their entire lives. And it's just seen in slightly different ways, but it is there through their entire lives and different experiences concreted in. And what you do and how you serve it changes, but that underlying thing is there. And once you recognize it, you can go, hey, actually, I can do anything and serve my why. Some things is going to serve my why at a higher level. Like I was talking to a lady yesterday, doing another episode, and saying my wife's why is to create joy. And she's an event manager. She organizes events. Obviously, right now, there's not a whole lot of event stuff. Most of her stuff is overseas things. And so now she's in a different role doing admin stuff, but she's still focusing on her why of I'm creating joy in people's lives by taking pressure off of their plate.
Definitely.
And you can actually apply, once you recognize it, you can actually go, hey, I'm a teacher. My why is that I want to create less pain. Cool. How am I creating less pain in these kids' lives every single day? By helping them and making it less stressful or making it so that they feel like they're engaged or whatever it is. It's I love your why. It's creating that bigger perspective because like you said, we get so singularly focused on one thing.
Well, that's it, singularly focused. And I don't think you became a cop because you said I want to get people tickets or arrest people. You became a cop because you want to help people. Even my friend, he wanted to help people. He was such a bad teenager. Like he was always getting in trouble with police himself. He said, so I want to do it a different way. So I think all of us go in a direction where we want to help people. And there's some entrepreneurs, their goal is to have money and that drives them. And they are normally the 1% that are ultra motivated in one direction. Yeah. And then they look back on their life and then you see them start helping people. Yeah.
It's so true. And I believe that everybody does have or ends up with that surface level of wanting to help people. And most cops, because I've been training people to get into the police force physically and mentally for the last few years. And everybody does want to help people, but it's when you dig under the surface of that and you find that like yours wanting to create a bigger perspective for people instead of just help people, you can actually then go, okay. And it actually creates even more power into that instead of shit, I want to help people. And if you're in a very burned out state, just focusing on how you can help people or help yourself each day is very important. But when you have that honed in, it's like honing in your niche. If you're trying to start a new business, when you hone it in really hard, it gives even more power and has even more impact. And that's it's amazing. So what would your recommendation for people when they're trying to figure out what their why is?
The first thing I think they need to write down the things, write down the things that bring them pain, write down the things they think bring them joy. And then when they realize a lot of times they won't have a big list and that's all I can write down. Is that it? So then you can take the 2 or 3 things that you wrote down that bring you joy and really just focus on those things. Yeah. For me, for a long time, it was being my dog. I wanted to be the best father. My dad was in the military. He was gone a lot. He loved me and he was there for me when he could be, but he didn't always attend my games. He just couldn't. I wanted to make sure I attended everything and did not miss anything. And when they look at life like that and people look at life, say, hey, whatever it is that brings you joy, put your full focus into that. And that's going to change as you get older. Yeah. It just changes. But then so I just had a down spot just a few months ago, had knee surgery last January. I'm like, oh crap, I can't run any more races. But then it was funny because I was thinking, okay, by week 6, I'm thinking I can run. No, couldn't run. I made myself get on elliptical. I couldn't really do that. I was like, dang, I can't walk or anything because I had really bad knee surgery. And, but then when I realized, I can start getting past that, start healing more. That's what we do in life, but we do it mentally. We can kind of heal. And once we get past that healing point, man, we'll start running again. And then we're sprinting. So I'm 50, be 51 in October. I'm back at a sprint in my runs when I need to be. So that's how we need to look at things. We pick those 2 or 3 things, go at them slowly, and then run into them and then start sprinting through it. And then you'll find something else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember I broke my hand once and I just got back into weight training. I had taken a little bit of a break after training for specialty squads and that. And I was on VIP protection at the time, broke my hand building a trailer, the power drill caught and rotated and spiral fractured my ring finger, the bone in the metacarpal in my hand. And so that was a long process. I ride a motorcycle, so I couldn't ride my motorcycle, the thing that I loved a lot. I was doing a lot of shooting at the time, couldn't do that because it was my right hand. I absolutely freaked out. And so what I did is again, same thing, found the things that brought me joy. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to rehab this hand as fast as I can. I got the best people that I can to do it. And so started doing that in the gym, just did legs, ended up going from hating legs to loving legs. Now I absolutely love doing squats and leg press and all that kind of stuff, which I used to hate doing legs like most guys. I like doing upper body, but no legs. And then with shooting, I just started to do things like I started to challenge myself. I was like, okay, cool. Well, if I can't shoot with my right hand, why not get better with my left hand? So then I started going to the range and I started just doing left-handed drills and just constantly and just honed in that left-handed shooting. And then as I could shoot with my right hand, I couldn't shoot with the other three fingers, but I could do it index and thumb. And so literally I was like, you can shoot a pistol with just index and thumb. So I was doing that. I'd still go out hunting. I just wouldn't use it. And so it's finding those things that bring you joy and just continually doing them, isn't it?
Definitely. And, surrounding yourself with people, you had mentioned it. You said, oh, I had a team.
Yeah.
You got to find who's going to be your team. In education, since I knew I was going outside that window in my speaking and writing books and stuff, there's educators and they're focused singularly on education. That's fine. That's great for them. That still brings them joy. And it does me too. But when I started going outside, I have different groups. So I have a speaking group. I have an authors group. I have a workout group. And when I go to the gym, it's that 3 a.m. group. And it's like 2 or 3 people and they're all ex-military and stuff. So I get to have that ultra man time where we get to talk about testosterone driving crap. And then that writers group, let's talk about the lovey-dovey stuff. And my speakers group, they challenge me and point me in a direction. Oh, you didn't do that right. So you got to have those little groups that are going to make you whole. And then you got to make sure you're surrounding yourself with your loved ones in a great way, not just saying I love you, but spending time with them.
Yeah, no, definitely true. So what would be your number one piece of advice for listeners when it comes to burnout?
My number one piece of advice is just take that first step into the thing that scares you most. And it doesn't have to be a big step, because oftentimes you're scared to take that big step. You don't have to leap. Some people leap and that's great and they do great at it. But my wife is an example. She's not a leaper, but when she took that step and I saw that smile on her face and the brightness in her eyes, she took another step. Her steps are small. I'm more of a jump right into it. And I want to tell her, just jump. Well, she's not a jumper. She's a stepper. And so you got to be willing just to take one little step into the thing that scares you. And all of a sudden you kind of open up, and then you got a little beef in your bones there. And I can take another step. And each time you take a step, something new will open up, a new window, a new door. And then you'll get a little excited and you'll want to take another step. You can't stop yourself. So that's like me. I want to do the ultra run. I should hate to want to do an ultra run. And, but I'm taking that next step. That's my goal.
Yeah. One step at a time. I love that, because one step at a time just builds more and more confidence as you just keep taking one step after the other. So Tony, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, and we'll put the links and everything down below, somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do it?
They can go to www.tonypollardspeaks.com. I have 2 books. You care if I share them up?
Yeah, go for it.
So these are my 2 books. They can both be found on Amazon.com under Tony Pollard.
So Living Life, and for those that aren't watching, Living Life and Driven by the Heart.
Yes. Yeah, Driven by the Heart is my latest book, and Living Life with Courage, Resilience, and Discipline. This is a chapter book about Desert Storm and being a single father.
Oh, wow.
Your group, I think, would really like this.
Yeah, they would.
Book. It's a quick read. You could read this in about 30, 40 minutes at the most. And there's some little tidbits at the back that'll help you. Steps I took to step out of my fear.
Cool.
And then Driven by the Heart is a full-size book. And there's several little stories and vignettes in here with little lessons at the end of each little story that'll help you. And it's all about character traits, courage, resilience, discipline, just goes on and on and on, and people's lives, my personal life intertwined with people's lives through history, and people have just done great things. So
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. If you resonated with Tony today, make sure you go have a look at those. Um, Last question I have for you, Tony, today is: what is your top tip to self-happiness?
For self-happiness, ooh, that's so deep. I had this young man come to me yesterday because I'm the boss in my job,
Yeah.
and he turned in his 2 weeks notice, and he said, I want to come directly to you, and his job doesn't necessarily dictate that. And I said, man, I really appreciate that. And he said, you've done everything to change the direction of this department to make us better. And I want you to know you really encouraged me to go live. So here's this man taking that step, changing his job. He has a mortgage, he has bills, he has kids, and all of a sudden he's going to leave a paying job to go do something that's on commission, but he's done it kind of part-time on the weekends. Take the step. Once you take that step, and it doesn't have to be big, a life will change for you. Here's this man, 24 years old. He served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He probably is happy having that paycheck and benefits every month. And all of a sudden he's giving that up because he wants to live life to the fullest.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So again, coming back to those, just take that step. Just take that step. Any last words, Tony?
Be courageous. It's okay to fail. You're going to fall. If you think of any boxer in the ring, ones that get knocked out, the ones that decide to get back in the ring the next fight are winners. I don't think you can look on any TV now and look at Madison Square Garden, see anybody that's been knocked out still laying there. They had to get up. They had to face their demons, and it's okay to face your demons. And once you face those demons, man, the world's going to open up to you and you can be a winner.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great last words, Tony. So as as everybody knows, or if you're new to listening to this podcast, here at Fight the Burnout, I live by a motto and always have with my business is train hard, test easy. Because at the end of the day, we're always need to be training, but we're always being tested as well. Why not make those tests easy? As Tony said today, take those little steps, focus on the things that make you happy. Those are all training tips to be able to make those tests so much easier. So as usual, if you want to reach out to us and get any more advice or get any knowledge on anything else, you have a question, just send us an email at fighttheburnouttpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll happily answer it back, or maybe even organize to get on the phone with you and have a chat. We love to talk, and we love to hear from you. So make sure you like, subscribe, share this episode to anybody that you think would resonate. And give us a comment or any advice that you might have for us. We love to hear it all as well. And again, thank you very much, Tony. And till next time, everybody, we love you. And make sure you keep training that mind and body hard so that all those tests are so easy.